Yeah, Coach, just your thoughts on the opening of training camp thus far in different type of year.
Well, number one, it's good to have the guys back and getting a chance to go through some things. First part, like I said, online and going through some things together. I thought the learning was going to be good, but then to get through the walkthroughs, and oftentimes really as a coach, you're trying to test the rules, go through the adjustments. So a walkthrough may have one play, here's a motion and a shift and the play for the offense and an adjustment that the defense has to make. So seeing the guys have to adjust and go. And then the strength and conditioning, we're not with them in that phase, but they're really pushing out. You could see the speed and the intent, that they're going after it. So a number of guys are really working at it. But I think it's good, Led. The format to have a ramp-up period makes a lot of sense.
And the signing of Darqueze Dennard earlier this week, how does he fit into your secondary, and what will y'all be asking him to hopefully he can do for the team?
Right, and fortunately for Quez, he's from Twiggs County, and so to have him back home in the state is good. But he's got experience both outside and inside. So over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll feature him in both spaces. The fact that he's played nickel, that's been a big help for us. But he's made his living, playing outside, and so as we're going through it, I think we probably need a few weeks to make sure we got him in the right space and feature him, but certainly glad to have another good player on the team. Okay, you want to hit ESPN? Thanks, Led to ESPN with Vaughn.
Can you hear me, Coach?
Yep, got you good.
Yeah, thanks, man. Been a lot of talk around the league, of course. Doug Peterson tested positive. I know the last time you talked to us, you talked about having like a contingency plan and stuff like that. Have you guys talked a little bit more about that? Like if somebody does catch it, and who would step in charge for you if things happen with you?
Sure. Well, yeah, you have to talk about it, number one. And then even it can go down a lot of layers, Vaughn. So Jeff Ulbrich would be the one that would be able to take on that role. Certainly Bob Sutton would support him on some of the things needed from game management as well. So, yeah, each of them have a contingency where you go into is what about if it's multiple people? And so those are the ones that you get into, because it was easy, I think, Vaughn, when I said, okay, 1 for 1. And then what about if both Jeff and I, those were the ones, where you doubled up. But that kind of tic-tac-toe, yeah, it took too long. So I can give you the first layer.
Okay. And my second question for you, we asked you last time about, if you'd keep a quarterback in quarantine. And one of the topics that's kind of arose the last couple of days is, roster, and if it would be smart to keep 3 guys on the active roster. Is that the way that you approach it when it comes to that point? Or are you comfortable just keeping the guy on the practice squad if you have to?
Yeah, it's a good question, and one that we're definitely spending time back and forth on. The ability, if there was an issue, we're now able to add someone from the practice squad late, which in the past you weren't able to do. So I think that factors in. But let's let it go through, the full training camp, and no matter what, I think you're right that having quarterbacks available. 3 and 4 of them, with an extended practice squad, I think that's a big deal. So I think you'll see some teams with 3, Vaughn. I also think you'll see some with 4, not just for COVID reasons, but if you knocked out 2 at a time, that is a COVID reason, I suppose. So you could be back in the same space. Okay, let's hit to Tori with the Athletic.
He's having tech issues if you want to go AP.
All right. I think Tori's jammed up, so we'll hit to with the AP. All right. Pass. It's like the draft. The AP passes. All right. AtlantaFalcons.com. Will.
Yeah. Hey, Coach. How are you?
Doing good, Will. How you doing, man?
Doing all right. So based on the time that you've gotten to know AJ Terrell since you guys drafted him, what is it about his personality that makes you believe he can deal with the pressure if you guys ask him to kind of step into a starting role right away? Because, there's some really good wide receivers on the schedule this year.
Yeah, that's the truth. And I would say that probably the trait that just comes across, and as you guys get to, be around him more and you'll see it, I would say it's the competitive fire, the will, the dedication. You feel it, the work that he puts in. So let's face it, to come in and play corner, certainly not only in our division, but in the NFL, as an early on, you better have your game right and the competitive, part all together. And he has all of those things. So that's Will, the thing that stands apart to me, because physically, certainly able to, and now putting the whole thing together, that competitiveness that he has, he's just, he's kind of down for fighting, especially at the line of scrimmage. And that's certainly something that I know is a part of his game.
Awesome. And then, I know the past 2 seasons you guys have been comfortable with Ito going into the year as kind of your number 2 back. But given how Brian Hill performed last year, and then also, some of the growth we saw from Quadrialis late in the season, are we going to see more of a true competition for that number 2 spot than we've maybe seen in years past?
And maybe we don't even call it into that space. How are we going to feature Ito and how are we going to feature Brian? They may be in different roles, Will, and make sure we're just going to put the guys in the very best spots. One thing I would say that Brian, that I've been just so impressed with, is how hard he's worked in the pass game, from where he came from out of Wyoming into his first, part here to where he is today. That part of his game has really changed, and he's a really complete player. So we're excited that Ito's back. He looks strong, and but that whole group of guys, I certainly think we'll have to find roles for everyone, and then make sure really clear on what they do best and try to feature them in those ways. Okay, thanks, Will. Want to go to Justin?
Sure. Hey, Coach. How's it going?
Doing good. How you doing today, Justin?
Doing pretty well. I had a question for you kind of about, with these acclimation period workouts on the field, you guys aren't allowed to be out there. Do you get any reports back, whether it's from Ricardo saying, hey, this defensive back is really working hard out there, and can you kind of do the other way of, hey, Grady, can you make sure this guy is doing X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, that, and we also film it, from the league standpoint to make sure that, guys are just doing, but more often than not right now, the mental part, Justin, in the walkthroughs, just to test, see where we're at, where's the communication, and then on the field, you're exactly right that it's player-led in that space. So, hey, let's work these things today, let's work the next thing, and they've been doing that for a few months on their own, so they're pretty accustomed of how to organize themselves and get together. So after the conditioning that the strength coaches do, then they take it a step further and work on some things themselves.
And I'm sure these are all still in the works and changing every day, but I remember you spoke, I think it was even back before, the time off, about maybe doing some practices at Mercedes-Benz, maybe doing big team meetings outdoors, because that's the only way you can do it. Are there any of those things you've planned on or put into place?
We're certainly going to try to go to the stadium. And when we're doing some of those scrimmages, to try and make it as game-like as we can all the way, through a halftime for, the college players. All right, this NFL half goes quick, or, be in the stadium, before the opener for certainly some of the rookies. As far as the team meetings goes, you're right. In some spaces, like having a drive-in, big screen to, fit everybody in with a lot of space. And for me, using a megaphone or a microphone to try to get, your message out to everybody. So those are just nuances. If that's what it has to, for us to do to play football and show that we can do that and do it really safely together, like, we're down for that. Okay, thanks, Justin.
Jason Butt.
Hey, Coach. And when it comes to rounding out, the large practice squad this year with 16 guys, do you guys plan to distance them in a certain way to where if something does happen to a position group that those guys are ready to go, and does an extra specialist even fit into the mix when you're talking about such a large group, given, any kind of the worst case scenario that could happen with the virus?
Right. And I think the trackers also help too, to know where we're at. So that helps keep 6 feet of distance. So there's actually a light that would go on if we were too close or too connected to somebody else for more than 15 continuous minutes. So when you're going through the practice squad, and let's just call it the roster in general, whether a player's active or inactive and part of the practice squad, I think having the depth all the way through is the big piece of that, and make sure that you're really covered, from A to Z, from quarterbacks to specialists to another tight end, a swing tackle, and versatility to me is going to be a big piece of that for a player that can do more than one thing. Any coach, would say that to you, Jason, but I think this year those words are probably more true than most years.
And then on top of that, have you guys talked about kind of an emergency list, just kind of going through the different scenarios? Is there an emergency list where, something happens in season and you need to get guys on, but also the issue I would imagine with the COVID protocol where it takes 5 days or 4 to 5 days. Have you guys kind of run through those scenarios too?
We have, and not as much with the entire staff, but that's certainly something TD and I have discussed to make sure. That's why you want to pull from your own practice squad first, because whether it was from someone else's practice squad, which sometimes happen, or a player from the street, that process is pretty long. So I think you're looking at two different scenarios. One for a long-term solution, if somebody's out for the year and you're wanting to add, maybe that's for a week ahead and moving forward, compared to the short term, you really would like to fill that through the practice squad. And I'm certainly hopeful between inactive players and the practice squad on those scenarios that we're able to fill from within.
Okay. Thanks, Coach.
All right, you're welcome.
Go Tori from The Athletic.
Hi, Coach. Hope you're having a good week. We were talking to Calvin a couple of days ago, and he seemed exceptionally excited to get underway, and because of the steps that he feels like he can make in this year. And just from your perspective, what ways do you see his role evolving, expanding this year?
All of the above, and he has really put in a fantastic offseason. The explosiveness, he's bigger, stronger, physically, and then there was some specific things for him, that he wanted at the top of routes at, certain depths. And so you certainly see the connection, really strong with him and Matt, the time that they've spent together to put that in. I would say he is right now is a player that is very hungry and wants to prove it and really excited. So you feel that kind of energy. And so for me as a coach, being back here with the players, so over the last 5 days, of being able to do some walkthroughs and being in meetings with them, that's the word I think that comes to mind when I think of Calvin, just how hungry he is for attacking this season. And, he's certainly in a mindset to do that. I think you have to get there physically, you have to get there emotionally, you have to get there schematically. Where's your game at? And so you keep making markers to go, and it's hard. All those things have to be ramped up to really play well. And I see that with Calvin.
And this kind of leads into it as well, just taking a look at the whole offense. And Matt said yesterday that he felt as though the offense had a lot of continuity this year in comparison to last year. And I was just curious kind of what you thought of using that word continuity and how you've seen it just so far this early into training camp.
Well, I think you can speed up the process on some, but not others. But when there's a lot of continuity for the new player coming in, it can be daunting at first because everybody's talking about something so quickly, but they can also bring you along quickly too. So the new player, whether it's Todd Gurley or Hayden Hurst or Laquan, they can get acclimated that much more quickly because everybody's on the same page. And so he doesn't have to, well, somebody said it this way and somebody else thought of it differently. The players are so much on the same page that adding a player in, there's just, this is how we do it, this is what we call it, and very clear and concise instructions. And quite honestly, them having to do a lot of things on their own forces player-to-player communication. And so they've shown they can give feedback to one another, lead one another through workouts. So I think coming in, they're further along because this is exactly how we do it, from player to player.
Kelsey Conway. Kelsey, I think you're still muted. All right, Tanitra.
Now I got you.
All right, how's it going?
Keep your eyes on the road, Tanitra.
I know. I'm literally pulled on the side of the road so I can focus on you. Thanks a lot for that. Two quick questions for you, Coach. Yesterday, the Packers mentioned that for the first two games, home games of the year, they're not going to have any fans. Obviously, Rams, Chargers, the same. And the league said they're considering virtual fans, sort of like the NBA. I know this is kind of pushed out, but any thoughts on that, just in terms of how what the Falcons might consider doing in that regard?
Well, I hope, for us, we still have the opportunity to have some fans here, because I know people are chomping at the bit to do it, and we'd certainly like to. So as far as the number, Tanitra, I'm just not sure, where we're at, but I think that's our aim, is to have fans here and to do it in such a safe way. But so if we can, I think that'd be great. And I think this year, more than ever, finding our ways to stay connected to the fans, where that game day feel, that's such a fun part of it as a fan, and also for players and coaches. So as many times as we can, I hope that we can. So no big resolutions on our side yet.
Okay. And listen, I'm sure you would have respected a player's decision to opt out, but now that the deadline has come and gone, no Falcons players opted out. What does that say to you about the team maybe being unified, or their confidence in the health and safety protocols for the Falcons, for the league, or just wanting to contribute to the team contending for a title?
I think it was important for all players, especially as you're going back to, their complex, to make sure the steps, were in place. And a lot of the things were like, man, you guys did a lot, and to make sure that the guys were safe. And I think that was really what you're driven by on this. This is bigger than football. So finding ways to say, this is, can we paint a picture of what it would look like when we're here at the facility, and all the things other than playing. I think that's clear for a ball player. They know what that looks like. It was all the other surrounding things. So I hope that had an effect on it as well. But I know it's not one size fits all. And coaches and players, lots of situations, not just with the ball players, but at home too, whether it's a spouse or children. So many factors to go into that.